You know what two movies I really badly wanted to see? You're Next and Insidious 2. More so, especially You're Next, because it looked pretty good from the trailer anyway, but then you got to the reviews and like everyone is like raving about You're Next and how it's like the best horror movie in the past 10 years. You know, people are going nuts about You're Next. So when I started reading the reviews, I was especially getting excited for that movie after that. Unfortunately, as soon as I got a car, both You're Next and Insidious 2 are gone from the cinema. And now I'm kind of just left waiting for them to become available to watch through other means. So, I was pretty pissed off about that. I mean, the only reason I don't really watch, like if I want to watch a film in a cinema and I don't get around to watching it, it's only because I don't have transportation. That's the reason, or at least that was the reason in the past. But now I have a car, so if I want to watch a movie in the cinema, I'll just drive and watch it, you know. Because beforehand, you'd kind of have to wait for your friends. Your friends would have to want to see the same movie as you do. So then when you, because the cinema for me isn't in walking distance at all. Like we would catch a train to Cardiff and then we'll just watch it there. But like, they're not really into horror movies, so like they wouldn't be caught dead watching something like Insidious 2 or You're Next. So I didn't get around to watching those two movies, which I was really gutted by, but oh well, I'll just have to wait to watch them through other means. But now I got a car, so at least that won't happen in the future. So in the future I can just drive and watch a movie if I want to see it. And that's what happened with Gravity. So Gravity, let's see. So the story of the movie, if you didn't know already, two astronauts are trapped in space. They're trying to get back to Earth. Like they were working on the satellite or something like that. I'm not too sure. It was like a satellite or something like that. And then something goes wrong and then they're stuck. And, it's just them trying to get back to Earth alive. That's the movie. So, of course it's getting like, this film has been getting like mad crazy reviews, like positive reviews. Like people are just raving about this film. So obviously I was excited for it. I had high expectations for it. I did watch it in 3D as well. I guess that's worth mentioning. It wasn't IMAX 3D, but it's just plain 3D. That is what I watched it in. So when I heard about this film, like sure, like although everyone was like raving about how awesome it was, I was kind of like, how exactly would they make this an interesting movie? Because the idea of two people trapped just floating around in space, it kind of like, how would they make this interesting for like 2 hours? Or for like a feature-length film, because this sort of movie could easily become boring. So I was kind of interested in how they made this film really good, if that's all the story is. And yeah, they found a way. Like they're not just like floating around in space. It's like the two astronauts which are left alive after this incident are trying to get back to Earth. Like they have to like go to these other space stations which are kind of like floating around the place. But yeah, there are some pretty cool, actually. Not pretty cool, but very good, like a very, very good action scenes in this film. I will say the first half of the film was far better than the second half. One or two parts in the second half of the film I felt as if it dragged a little bit, but it was still a great movie. Like the first half has some like really like spectacular action scenes. The special effects are great. Like you do feel like you're floating around in space with them. Like I'm not too sure how they filmed it. Like obviously they use CGI and whatnot, but the CGI is good. It's not good, it's great. Like the CGI is fantastic. So the special effects work is amazing. And just on a technical level, the film's like very impressive, because I'm sure you've heard about this if you've read other reviews, but the first like 15 minutes of the film, or I don't know, like first 10 or 15 minutes of the film go on without a single, without cutting. So that's pretty impressive. Like sure, maybe they did cut, but they used like, some effects to hide the cuts, but before you can tell there is a cut, it goes on for like 10 minutes. And yeah, it's just like the camera work's really impressive. I know the guy who directed this also directed Children of Men, so if you've seen Children of Men, you know how well that's shot and how he goes for those really long shots without cutting. It's the same with Gravity, so if you like the way Children of Men was directed, well, you're gonna love Gravity as well, because it's the same guy and he uses the same style throughout. So like I said, special effects are wonderful. It does feel like space. There wasn't really a moment at all where I was kind of like, that looks kind of lame. Like it just looks amazing. So whoever did the special effects work for this movie deserves a lot of credit, because it does look amazing. Like it does genuinely look as if they are in space, and the way they're floating around, like it doesn't look hokey at all. The special effects works. Special effects are amazing. Like they are very good. The 3D. Let's quickly talk about that. So they go for the immersive 3D. I've said this many times before. I'm not a fan of the immersive 3D. I prefer the gimmicky 3D where you get like blood being thrown at the screen and whatnot, which works best for horror movies, of course. Like I said, they go for the immersive 3D. I mean, they have one or two gimmicky moments, like when George Clooney is kind of reaching towards the camera to grab to grab an object. I can't remember what it was. And when there's like pieces of debris from the ship are like flying towards the screen. They have a few moments like that, which are fun. Aside from that, it's mainly immersive. But I would say, like, I'm not going to be saying this often, but the immersive 3D actually works, at least for the first half of the movie. Like, the second half of this movie has quite a few interiors. Like, we spend quite a large amount of time inside spaceships on the second half of the movie. But the first half of the movie, for the most part, takes place in, like, the vacuum of space. And, you have, like, the characters are kind of, like, spinning around in the vacuum of space. And it actually works for the immersive 3D. This is like the first and probably the only time I'm ever gonna. Well, no, I wouldn't say only time. I'm sure another movie will come along in the future which will impress me with the immersive 3D. But this is the first ever time a movie has gone for the immersive 3D and it actually worked, or at least for the first half, because they're in space, they're floating around, so it's it feels like, it looks like they are floating within space, because the 3D kind of lends towards that, because the whole entire movie takes place in space. Like I said, the second half of the movie takes place in quite a large portion of the second half of the movie takes place within the interiors, within like spaceships. So the 3D doesn't really lend itself well there. But the first half of the movie was amazing with the immersive 3D. Like, it does feel like you do get. Like, the first half of the movie was really impressive, really engaging, really immersive and whatnot, so the 3D certainly helped, because my full, complete attention was into this movie, because it's just, so visually it's amazing. Like, I don't use that word, I don't think I use that word often for movies, but the first half of this movie, generally, like, the visuals are just genuinely amazing, and the 3D obviously works. So like when the astronauts are like floating around in the exterior shots, at least where they're not inside the spaceship, when they're floating around, it looks really good. Like, the immersive stuff works because it looks like they are just floating around in space, and it looks like there is depth to space and whatnot, so that looks good. But the interiors, not so much whenever they go inside the spaceship, which is more so in the second half of the movie anyway. So the first half of the movie was great for the immersive stuff. Yeah, so the action scenes, like I said, there were some moments where I was kind of like genuinely on the edge of my seat, or just staring in awe at what I was watching, because there's like two action scenes in this movie. They appear in the first half of the movie, like, so there's two action scenes in the first half of the movie which were genuinely, like, I was just sitting there in awe. Like, it just looked so, like, wonderful. It just looked amazing. So that's it. The action scenes were really good. The music is used sparingly. There's not much music, but when there is music, the music's pretty good. Like, the music sounds spacey, if you know what I mean. And I was warned about this beforehand, before I watched the movie, by several people. Like, one of my friends went to see it and he mentioned this, and also a lot of people online were saying the same thing. The dialogue is pretty bad, and yeah, it is. I mean, well, George Clooney most of George Clooney's dialogue, it works pretty well. I didn't really have a problem with what he was saying. But Sandra's character says some things which are just like lame. Like, her dialogue's really hokey and just really, it feels really Hollywood and really just hokey. Like, her dialogue was terrible. Like, she delivered them well enough, I guess. She did a fine job, an okay average job at delivering the lines. So it's not really her fault. It was just the scriptwriter's fault, I guess, because I'm telling you, some of the lines she has to say, they are terrible. I mean, they are pretty cringeworthy. They're not too good. And one thing which kept taking me out the movie as well is that these two astronauts, George Clooney and Sandra, these are the unluckiest people in the world. Like, the amount of things that go wrong for these two people, because of course the movie is about them trying to get back to Earth, but just as they're about to, like, something, as the situation is looking brighter, as something well is going for them, something even worse goes for them. Like, just as they're about to, like, succeed, something bad happens which prevents them from succeeding. And this happens several times in the movie, and it's just like they are like the unluckiest people in the world, and it just gets a bit much, in my opinion. Especially towards the second half of the movie. Sometimes it gets a bit ridiculous where it, you know, that's the thing with this movie. Like I said, it's really immersive. The 3D actually helps, like I said, because it looks like they are actually floating around in space. That certainly helps, the 3D stuff. And the special effects and everything are amazing, so obviously that kind of helps you really believe these people really are trapped in space. So you know, you for the most part, I was pretty immersed into the movie, and I was like, my full, complete attention was into the movie. Like, you feel like you're with these characters trapped in space, and you're like, you know, you know. So when things kept going wrong for them, and like like I said, an insane amount of things go wrong for them to the point where it gets a bit ridiculous, in my opinion, and it kind of started to take me out of the movie. Like, it almost becomes borderline comical because of the amount of things that go wrong for these guys. And, you know, it gets a bit humorous, almost, because of how ridiculous it kind of gets. Because, like, I understand, it's a movie. I mean, it would be a pretty short movie if they got straight back to Earth, so they have to keep thinking of, you know, things that go wrong in order for the movie to continue, and for things to become, you know, more exciting. But, I don't know, like, so I understand it from that perspective, but regardless, it did take me out the movie, because I was just thinking, this is getting a bit ridiculous with all the things going wrong here. But having said that, I still like the movie. What else is there to say, really? I have like this little notes, some notes written here. Yeah, okay, so there was this one moment where I was just like, oh, this is bullshit. So I was like just rolling my eyes at. At one point in the movie, one of the characters kind of, they kind of have a breather, they're away from danger for a brief moment, and then one of the characters kind of curl up into a fetal position, like a newborn baby. And the camera kind of just lingers on the character in the fetal position, and we kind of zoom out for a little bit, and the sun's in the background, so you kind of got, like, you know, this light beaming from behind them as they are like in this fetal position. You know, it's like symbolism or something like that. I mean, that moment was pretty lame. I was sitting there like rolling my eyes like, oh, this is like, you know, especially when the rest of the movie, everything in the movie up until that point was like phenomenal. So as soon as the character kind of rolls up into this fetal position, it feels like really forced. I was sitting there, I was just like, ah, oh, this is just bullshit. So that moment was really lame. That really hurt the movie. Like, that really took me out of it, you know. I didn't like that moment at all. So I was like, I don't know, what else can I say? Like I said, the dialogue was pretty hokey. Well, Sandra's lines were bad, at least. Sandra, as an actress, she does an okay job, but like, she's not great, but, you know, she's serviceable enough. George Clooney, I like George Clooney. In this one, he did great. I don't really buy his character. Like, his character is so level-headed, and even when, like, he's experiencing all these near-death experiences where he was like a second away from getting killed, he, like, it doesn't even faze him. Like, I know his character is supposed to be like this really, I don't know, I guess that's what they were going for. He's just this impossibly like, calm guy. Like, he never reacts to the situation at all. Like, I'm not saying he's a bad actor, that he can't show like that he's scared or anything. I'm not saying that. Like, that's clearly what he's going for. But I don't know, I thought that's kind of weird. But either way, I like George Clooney in this movie. He was good. I don't really have anything to say. Else to say, like, this first half of the movie is far better than the second half. I think at one or two moments, the second half of the movie started to get a bit tiresome, in my opinion, because, you know, like I said, things just keep going wrong for these two astronauts. It gets a bit ridiculous at some points. But overall, it was a really good movie. Like, the first half of the movie, the first third of the movie was phenomenal. Then the second half of the movie was pretty good. And then the final third of the movie was just, yeah, that's good, that's fine. So as the movie progresses, it does start to get a bit tiresome, but it's still enjoyable from beginning to end. There's just one or two moments where it kind of lost me a little bit. But yeah, this movie is definitely worth seeing, though. Like, especially for the first half an hour. Like, the first half an hour is phenomenal. Like, there were two action scenes in the first half an hour, which I was genuinely kind of staring at the screen in awe. I was like, whoa, this is pretty heavy stuff. Like, you know, like I said, it's amazing special effects. You know, it's extremely well shot. It was just really, really exciting stuff. Like I said, the only bad things really is some of Sandra's dialogue is really god awful. Like, I do mean bad. It's not good. Like, especially that's the thing with bad dialogue in really good movies. Like, when a movie's been really good, like, and when then like if a movie's been really spectacular and whatnot, and then all of a sudden you get bad dialogue, like it kind of there's a contrast here for the movie being really good and then suddenly being god awful with this terrible dialogue. But then it starts being good as soon as the dialogue ends again. But the dialogue really stands out because of how good the rest of the movie was. So yeah, I recommend it. It's not as good as people. In my opinion, it's not as good as like the critics are making it out to be. It's not the best movie of all time. I doubt it'll probably be in my top 10 list of 2013, like top 10 movies of 2013. It'll probably be on the list, but it won't be like, it'll probably be somewhere in the lower part of the list. It's not going to be number 1, 2, 3 or 4, I don't think. Don't get me wrong, it is a really good movie though, but I think it's overhyped a little bit. It's not as good as everyone's making it out to be. But the first half an hour though, I'm telling you, the first half an hour of this movie was, yeah, that was pretty impressive. I was really into it in the first half an hour. That's not to say I disliked the second half, but I still really dug the second half. It just had that's when a few moments. It's just the second half of the movie is when I had a few moments where I was kind of like, nah, this is like, whether it be the dialogue or the fact that something wrong is going again, something bad has happened again. But yeah, great movie. I still liked it. Gravity, definitely worth seeing. It's not as good as everyone's saying, but yeah, check it out. It's really good. I'm going to quickly talk about a few spoiler things here, so leave now if you want spoilers. So, I like the decision to kill off one of the main characters, because there really are only 2 characters for the whole entire movie. Well, there was this third astronaut in the first 5 minutes, but he gets killed in the first 5 minutes, so who cares about him? You got Sandra and George. They are like the only 2 characters for the whole entire movie. After that, they killed off George Clooney at like 30 minutes into the movie. He dies 30 minutes into the movie. I thought that was a bold move. I personally would have preferred if they killed off Sandra's character, simply because, it's more predictable if they for them to kill off the man than it was the woman. So if they killed off, the female character, like, when you got a female and male character and they're both going through a movie together, you expect the man to die over the female. That's the sort of stuff they do, because people get more upset when a woman dies in a movie and they're more likely to complain and shit, sexism and all that ridiculous shit. But I would have preferred it if they killed Sandra off rather than George, because, well, aside from the fact George is like a more charismatic, did I pronounce that right? Charismatic, that's it. Aside from the fact that George Clooney is a far more charismatic actor than Sandra, it's just, it's the fact that she's a female, so you kind of expect them, like when I was sitting there watching the movie, I was kind of like, okay, so they're probably going to kill one of these characters off at some point, but if they're going to kill someone off, it's going to be George. And I got my cat meowing outside my door. That kind of made me jump. So I was still fine with them killing off George, but I'm just saying, I think it would have been a lot more unexpected if they killed off Sandra's character. The 2 action scenes which I really liked were, the first one was when towards the start, where Sandra's kind of she's kind of strapped into this like metallic pole thing, like when the spaceship gets hit by all these flying like debris, and then the ship kind of comes apart, and when it comes apart, Sandra's like strapped to this like metal pole thing, and it's kind of spinning around like at insanely high speed, and she's still strapped to it. And George Clooney is like, yelling at her to release herself through the community. Hang on, I'm gonna sort out my cat. Okay, so I just let my cat in my room. Okay, so as I was saying, so like I really like that action scene where like Sandra was strapped to that like metallic pole thing. So it's like spinning around it at an insanely high speed, and George Clooney is like yelling at her to let go. And because like the G-force of her spinning around is so intense, she's starting to get lightheaded, and she kind of goes unconscious for like a few seconds. And like, because the thing is, for those of you who are watching this without seeing it, the metallic pole is kind of, it's being propelled in a direction away from Earth. So she's just getting like further and further away from Earth, and obviously the longer she stays on this thing, the further she's going to get away from Earth, and the more fucked up her situation is going to get. And she's kind of like getting lightheaded, so she doesn't really know what's going on. And like George is just like yelling at her to like release herself. So that scene was really exciting. Like the camera work on that scene was like really just really impressive as well. So eventually she lets herself go, but she lets herself go at the wrong time, because she tries to time it right, so when it swings towards the Earth, she lets herself go, so she'll be propelled back towards the Earth, but she times it wrong, and when she unleashes herself, because she timed it wrong, she gets propelled away from the Earth, so now she's getting even more, like, her situation is now even more messed up. So that was just a really exciting scene, and when she, like, let herself go and she started flying away away from the Earth, and you realise she just let herself go at the wrong time, it's like, it's a great oh shit moment. Like, when I watched that, I was like, oh fuck, like, that was a generally powerful moment. Like, I was really into the movie at that. And then she kind of just floats away for a while, and she's constantly spinning, because of course in space, there's no way for you to, if you were spinning like that, there wouldn't really be any way for you to stop unless you were George Clooney with that air propellant thing to, you know, propel yourself in the right direction. But so she was kind of just spinning around for a while. I thought that was really impressive. I actually felt a bit motion sick as well doing that, when the camera is kind of like just strapped to her. So the camera's strapped to her, so she kind of looks kind of normal, but you can constantly see the background kind of spinning. But because she's still spinning, but the camera's like kind of attached to her, so she doesn't spin like the background does. And that goes on for, like, I'm not even exaggerating, like 3 minutes straight of her just spinning and the camera's kind of strapped to her. I did start feeling a bit motion sick, but on the bright side, it did make me feel like I was with her, so it made the film a lot more immersive. So I will forgive the movie for making me feel a little bit motion sick, because it certainly made the movie like, I felt like I was with her, so that's a positive thing. You know, it's immersive. The second action scene, which I was like on the edge of my seats, was when George and Sandra, they're trying to grab onto the space station. Because of the momentum, they're kind of like going past the space station. And they're trying to grab, like, the aim of the game here is to grab onto a part of the space station so then they can kind of clamber on it and then climb inside. But they kind of miss it, and like, they are constantly moving along the space station, constantly trying to grab onto something so they can pull themselves into the space station. And obviously, if they miss the space station, they're going to keep going in the other direction, and they're screwed. That they have no way to survive if they miss the space station. And it gets to the point where at the end of the space station there's like a bunch of really thin wires just hanging off it. There's like a cobweb of wires hanging off the end of the space station, and they are kind of like falling through it, and like Sandra's foot gets stuck on it, but George Clooney, he's screwed. He keeps going, and so she grabs onto his hands. But because his momentum was so great or something, I'm not sure about the physics here, but I'm not sure how accurate they were. Apparently the physics of this film were accurate, so okay, I'll take everyone's word for it. But because of George Clooney's momentum, he's still being pulled in the other direction away from the space station, and like Sandra's foot is kind of caught in the like cobweb of wires, and she's kind of holding on to George, and like, you know, at that point, that's when George dies. He's forced to let go of her in order to let her survive so she can kind of clamber back up the cobweb of wires. But that was the moment where I was like really on the edge of my seat. Like, as she's kind of, you know, it's just really exciting watching the two trying to grab onto the space station, and they keep missing the part, or their fingers keep sliding off, and then it gets to the point where they're at the end of the space station, and then there's nothing left to grab onto but the wires, and then like, just as Sandra's about to go past it, her foot gets stuck on the cobweb of wires. So that was a really intense moment, and you're kind of like, you know, the wires are starting to break, they're starting to snap. That was a really exciting moment. I really liked that moment. The other thing which I really liked, yeah, was the George Clooney moment. So like I said, that's the moment where he dies. He kind of drifts off into space and, well, dies. So later on, when Sandra's in the space station, she has this moment where she's going to kill herself, and she brings the oxygen levels down, and she kind of gets lightheaded, and then all of a sudden George Clooney shows up. And he climbs inside the space station, so it turns out he wasn't dead, he survived somehow. And at that moment I was like, what? Like, I was kind of confused. Like, I was like, you know, it's cool that George Clooney is back, cause you know, I really like him as an actor and he's fun to watch, but what? Like, how, what? Like, this makes no sense. And as the scene keeps going on and they're talking to each other, and then as the camera started to like zoom in on Sandra's face, and George was kind of kept talking, at that point, that's when I realised what they were doing. It's just all it was a hallucination. Like, George Clooney wasn't real. She kind of fantasized it. So when the camera started to zoom in on her face, and he kept talking and they kept zooming in on her face, that's when I was like, oh right, now I see what they're doing. It took me a while there, but I eventually caught on to what they were doing. But that was a great moment. Like, it was a great what the fuck moment. That was a really good moment, yeah. Okay, so one thing as well, just a quick note here. You know how I was saying, like, they have the worst luck ever, because like everything which could possibly go wrong goes wrong, and eventually so. In the end of the movie, Sandra gets back to Earth. She's in this pod, and she lands in this lake, and it floats to the bottom. So she opens the hatch, starts to swim out, and she kind of passes through this vegetation, like this seaweed or this vegetation of some sort in the lake when she's trying to swim to the surface. And, you know, because everything that could possibly go wrong has gone wrong up to this point, I was so expecting her feet to get like caught up in the seaweed and for her to kind of get like stuck, and then we'll have this like quick little 30-second moment where she's kind of like, you know, trying to get her foot free from the vegetation, and you know, she's trying to swim up but then her foot's stuck on the vegetation and she has to try and get her foot free. I swear to God, I was so sure they're going to do that, but they didn't do it. So I'm glad they didn't do that as well, because that would have been a bit much. Yeah, that's really all I have to say. So Gravity, yeah, I liked it. Good movie. Like, you know, I said one or two bad things about the movie, like the dialogue or how ridiculous it kind of got, but the first half of this movie is so, like, amazing. Like, the first half of the movie was just amazing. Genuinely amazing. So it's worth watching for the first half, definitely. Having said that, the second half was still fine. There's just a few things which I was bugged by. But, yeah, Gravity, watch it. That's it. So, thanks for watching and see ya, I guess.